6.
I'm sorry, they gave him your minutes. That was the way it was written. I apologize, but he went over his 3 minutes.
Okay, I think to some extent we knew from the very beginning that if we were going to put an alternative measure on the ballot, we would have to really work long and hard to do it. And I just wanted to thank our city attorney Jennifer for working some late hours and some long hours to do this, and also my colleague on the council, Brian Bilbray, for contributing, and anyone else on the staff who did. I think we don't really have the luxury of going beyond this council session, I don't believe, unless there's a special session, in order to make the ballot deadline.
Yes, you could have a special meeting or continue, well, essentially adjourn this regular meeting to a date next week. August 10th is your deadline. So.
But we'd have to call a special council meeting to do that. I'm a little bit concerned about some of the technical points that have been raised that indicate there may be some catch-22s. Have you had a chance to think about those comments, and do you have any response?
I didn't write them down.
Did you see that?
So I can tell you that one of the things that they mentioned was the exception about what this ordinance does not apply to, and I can tell you that exception is directly out of the County of San Diego's ordinance, and that is their exception. So it is different than the exception that's in your current ordinance that says 3 or more persons. This one is a different exception because it is, you are no longer going to have an ordinance which prohibits large-scale facilities. This one allows large-scale facilities. So being that we were taking the county as an example, which was going to allow large-scale facilities, which has allowed a large-scale facility, we took their exception as they drafted it and put it into this ordinance. So it is a change from, again, the other ordinance you have, but now the city, if this ordinance were to go into effect, the city would have a large-scale facility, so there isn't as much of a need for the 3 or less persons to get together, although that is something council can change. You can make those changes. Depending on if council wants to go forward with this, it may be difficult to integrate all the changes tonight because in something like this, we have to be precise and exact. So, you know, those are things to consider amongst the council and if you want to make those changes. As far as the background checks on all the members, the county, I believe our definition of responsible persons is different than the county's, and that's the county only has responsible persons listed as those who are jointly and severably responsible for operating the collective facility. There was a feeling that that was a vague definition, and since no on-site growing is going to occur, and essentially every member of the collective would be the ones who would be authorized to supply the marijuana to the facility, the idea of responsible persons became a larger, essentially every member of the collective is responsible for the marijuana coming to the facility. And so that is an expanded definition. If you would like to go to the county definition of responsible persons, then every member of the collective would not have a background check, and the city wouldn't have any certainty with respect to those people who are providing marijuana to the facility. Because again, the difference here is that the city facility under this ordinance wouldn't allow on-site cultivation, whereas again, the county one does allow on-site cultivation. So, you know, I'm not sure of all of the operation of the county facility. I don't know if they have a large amount of cultivation that went on there, but again, they have a huge facility in an industrial area, which is just something that can't occur in IB. The patient rights issues, there's, you know, there are sections in the ordinance which mention that no parts of this ordinance shall be applied if they would violate state or federal law with respect to patients' rights.
So we have to take them to court.
And there's also a provision in here that would say all patients or members of the collective would be assigned a number, so that document that the city may review or look at in their inspection and enforcement would not include the patient's name at that point in time. So, you know, that measure was taken and put in there to help facilitate that issue of having the names of, you know, all of the members of the facility. You know, again, like I said, if the council is concerned about these particular issues, you can make changes to the initiative if those areas do cause you concern that the,
She wasn't ready for this.
public speakers here tonight have brought up.
I think probably one of the practical, well, I mean, my view is that if we're gonna enact an alternative measure, it ought to be a measure that
Somebody will vote for it?
people would vote for in preference to the citizens initiative, which has very few safeguards or regulatory elements to it, and including the likelihood or the possibility of numerous medical marijuana dispensaries in all the commercial areas. So that is probably the number one reason why I think the council voted in favor of us trying to establish an alternative measure. I haven't heard anybody object to the fact that there would be one allowed.
Nope.
As opposed to many, but I am concerned about the problem of small scale cultivation being a problem. We've allowed it right now in Imperial Beach, even though we've had a ban on MMDs.
On large scale.
Right, on large
or
scale.
more persons.
Right. So, I'm trying to think through here, under a little pressure of time, whether we have the ability to not, what would be the impact of not repealing the 3 or less if we had that at the same time as the provision that we're looking at right now.
Just as hard to pass it. Good luck.
I know we could do it, but I'm not sure whether that opens up some other loopholes we haven't considered.
That's why I think if you want to suggest changes, I think it would take. It's hard to deliberate.
In front of people.
Probably need another committee meeting when we get back to you by the 10th.
Can't deliberate in public.
I'm gonna go ahead and say just my piece, and I'm not sure if we heard or something. I listened to myself 14 days ago. I'm not in favor of a competing initiative. I believe that there are enough problems with the existing one that we approved to put on the ballot in November. I mean, this thing doesn't take into consideration that we did not prohibit people access within Imperial Beach. Our present rules allow for the 3 or less. I think that this is just asking for storefront, and whether it be in Imperial Beach, San Diego, the county, we don't have a hospital here, we don't have a lot of things here. We don't provide access to everything that everybody wants in Imperial Beach within the city of Imperial Beach. And that was one of the considerations we did when we originally adopted our ordinances several years ago. I think there's plenty of problems. One of the things I saw in there is that you have to be a consumer or a diagnosed person to even own one of these things. I've never understood the U.S. government telling somebody they had to drive a car to sell a car before. I think that there is many problems with it. I think a decent opposition statement will clarify things for those folks that will be voting in November. And as everybody said, if so be it, they don't believe in the opposition statements to it, they want to enact what the people have put on there, so be it. But I just don't see putting a competing one. I think we did the right thing when we enacted what we did. And I'm just not going to see spending the time on it. I wish we hadn't gone this far on it, but I mean, it has things like, you know, somebody mentioned being able to regulate these things. But within the present ordinance or resolution that's going before people in November, it says that once you issue the thing, the city of Imperial Beach can never take it away. So how do we get to regulate anybody? I mean, those are the type of things that somebody might have spent just the last couple hours trying to tear apart the one that the city attorney and our little subcommittee put together. But if you look at the piece of paper that was put before the people for signatures, there's all kinds of problems in that. I'm sure wish we'd get mirrors out before we accuse other people. So I myself,
shut the fuck up.
I'm not going to be able to support putting a separate one on there just because somebody put something else out there that we don't like. I believe in what we did the first time, and that's where I'd stand on it.
Right.
Let's go.
Go have a drink.
It's time to go home. Jane's, let's go.
That's fun.
Thank you.
See you at the bar, Janet.
Spriggs and Milburn, thank you for your extra time. I think people don't realize how time consuming our positions are, and to take more time on this issue was really good for both of you.
Took hours
Ms. Lang,
to take
thank
out
you
the
as
U.S.
well.
attorney.
And wordsmithing such a document is challenging. And when I read it, I had the same reaction as I read the other one, that I feel there are flaws in it. There are flaws in the initiative that was put forth. There's flaws in this initiative as well. And Mr. Mayor, if your advocacy is for a decent opposition piece, as you stated, I could support that. Thank you.
It's gonna come down to King.
Well, I would prefer us to see a competing ballot on there because I'm just not confident that even though the other initiative has its flaws, I think that it's gotten enough signatures where you'll see it pass.
Yes,
So I'd like to see. It's just my thoughts of giving an alternative that might get more votes than the citizens initiative, where it fixes a lot of the problems that the citizens initiative doesn't touch. So that's my thought on it. I mean, really, if you guys don't agree, that's fine. But I'm not confident that there's enough people in opposition that the other ballot's going to fail. And then we're stuck with potentially 19 dispensaries on Palm Avenue. So was it 19? So.
Sounds ridiculous to me, but sure, it's a great one.
Thank you. Usually things done in haste lack some of the details we'd like to see to make them work the best way possible. I think what was presented in terms of the initiative by the citizens lacks a lot of clarity. It leaves an open door for things we don't want in the city. Or I don't want. My constituents don't want.
Should have worked with us.
I think we have some holes in this one too. It's something we brought from elsewhere. We tried to craft it. Our committee worked on it. I have to read something here because it just doesn't make any sense. And perhaps our council, I know it probably came from the county. It says exemptions for small-scale medical marijuana collectives. A medical marijuana collective facility operated by a qualified patient for the amount of marijuana at no time exceeds 1.5 times the amount allowed by state law for a single qualified patient under health sections, etc., etc. One person, to my knowledge, by definition is not a collective. We've got a problem here.
Just at its face.
So, I mean, a very simple thing that we need to address. I think we need to clean up a couple of things. I'm in concurrence with Mr. Bilbray. I think we could clean this up. I do also think we write the wording in the ballot that, hey, you're going to have a prolific
Well, I'm really torn because this is a very difficult issue. I voted in favor of the ban with the exception for 3 or less. I still feel that way, but there's no point in putting an alternative measure on the ballot that is so flawed that people aren't going to vote for it and will vote for the one that's even more open-ended.
Yep.
So, you know, either we are going to fix it as best we can, and footnote, it'll never be satisfactory to everybody, no matter what we do, right? So there will be any restrictions that we put in, even those that are straightforward and not overly onerous. Well, it's going to depend on the beauties in the eyes of the beholder. It's going to draw some fires. So I think it's hard for us to make a judgment right now whether this is flawed enough to not go forward and needs more time. On the other hand, if people perceive it as being overly restrictive, contradictory, problems in definitions, etc., then it's worthless putting it on the ballot that way, because it'll be an easy target and it'll get everybody focused on the other one, and that's not necessarily what we want, what we need as a city, you know. So I really don't have a clear answer to this, other than we take more time to fix it, or we drop it now and see what happens in the general election. And I think we just need to get a consensus on the council about which way to go here. I'm willing to work on it. I'll be down for
Mr. Briggs, I think that, I think the thing is with time constraints for one thing. If you remember when, surprisingly to some of the folks here, when we originally and I proposed going ahead and putting it on the ballot without a report, that reasoning was due to staff time. Why do we generate more paper for the sake of generating more paper? And I still am very, very concerned about how much time we're spending on something that is not going to make it a better place to live, which is Imperial Beach.
For you.
And I'm sorry that, a lot of time has already been spent. And probably when we originally said 100,000, 12 people signed this thing, they qualified, put it on the ballot, let the people vote. If the opposition comes out and puts together the right arguments, I think that they have a thing. If the people read the arguments and that's what they believe in, they'll vote the correct way. For us to keep churning it out and trying to fix it, I think that I just don't support just keep going on this. I'd say just see what happens in November. I know that you put a lot of effort into it. I understand Mr. Bilbray's comments on that, but I think that if somebody put as the headliner on there, as many as 18 collectives in Imperial Beach, that would be a shock. Probably even some of those 1,012 people that signed it.
Somebody might even believe it.
That's my
Fool. No. Crickets.
I would make a motion then that the original citizen originated initiative be placed on the ballot.
It already
And
is.
that we, as a council, or individually, just have a decent opposition to it. And do not have an alternative ordinance.
Ms. Bragg, I understand what you're saying. We did actually vote on putting it on the ballot the last meeting.
Just saying.
But what you're saying is to work on the opposition, then, is that your motion, then? And not to
Just to
put the,
dismiss our competing ordinance, not that one.
I'll second that then. Do we have
It's not
any
gonna pass.
comments, questions before we vote?
I do have a question in terms of the argument. So are you suggesting that a draft argument would be brought back before the city?
I don't think that even Ms. Bragg was saying brought back
Okay.
before this. I think
Okay.
that we're all allowed to sign on.
Yes, the resolutions you've already approved allow each council member, all council council members to sign an argument in favor or against the citizen drafted initiative.
But we don't
So-
have to do it here, and it
Right.
can be done by one individual, it might not even be a council member, is that correct?
Exactly, so you don't even need a motion
So-
because it's already been done.
Okay, so that part of the motion really isn't really what that part ought to really be dropped, in a sense, the part that has the right statement. Your motion is that we just go forward with, that we kibosh the alternative
The
measure.
alternative, and I
Okay.
appreciate that.
Ms. Banks will clarify, because I was your seconder, that basically your motion is to set aside our alternative motion, proposal.
Okay.
Maintain that second. Do we have any more comments thoughts on that? No? So, could we please vote on that?
Motion carried by the following vote. Ayes, Janney, Spriggs, Bragg. Noes, King and Bilbray.
It's us against them.